In the 20th century, one idea would divide the entire world in two. It promised a paradise on earth. No rich, no poor. Everyone finally equal. It sparked revolutions, toppled empires, and reshaped whole nations. At its peak, nearly a third of all humanity lived under its rule. But behind that promise, something had gone terribly wrong. This is the story of communism, how a dream of perfect equality became one of history's greatest tragedies. To understand the dream, we begin in the smoke of the industrial age. The 1800s. Machines transform the world almost overnight. Fortunes are built on coal, steel, and cotton. But the new wealth flows to a handful of factory owners at the very top. Below them, workers toil 12, 14, 16 hours a day. Children as young as 6 work the machines for pennies. Cities swell with smoke, disease, and desperate poverty. In this world of chimneys and hunger, one philosopher asks why. Karl Marx. With his friend Friedrich Engels, who had seen the misery of Manchester's mills, Marx studies history itself. He concludes that all of history is a struggle between two classes: the owners, who control the factories and the land, and the workers, who own only their labor. In 1848, Marx and Engels publish the Communist Manifesto. Marx spends years, poor and often ill, in the reading room of the British Museum. In 1867, he publishes his masterwork, Das Kapital. That same year, revolutions erupt across Europe. The old order trembles. Its cry echoes for a century. Workers of the world unite. His solution is total. Abolish private property. End the profit of the few. Let the workers own the factories, the farms, and the future, together. No bosses, no landlords, no rich, no poor. He calls it communism. It is a powerful dream, but Marx never explains how to actually run it. Critics warn that handing all power to the state could be dangerous. Few listen. For 70 years, it stays an idea in books. Then history cracks open. Russia is an empire ruled by one man, Tsar Nicholas II. Most of his people are poor peasants, with little land and less hope. The monarchy is seen as corrupt and adrift, haunted by the mystic Rasputin. Then the First World War drags Russia into slaughter. Millions die at the front. At home, the bread runs out. In February, starving crowds and mutinous soldiers force the Tsar from his throne. Germany secretly sends one exiled radical home to Russia, hoping he will spread chaos. His name is Vladimir Lenin. Lenin leads the Bolsheviks, a party that believes in Marx and in seizing power. His slogan is simple and irresistible: all power to the Soviets. In October, they storm the capital in the name of the workers. They promise the people 3 things: peace, land, and bread. For the first time, a nation will be built on Marx's dream. But not everyone accepts them. Russia collapses into a brutal civil war. Reds against whites. Foreign armies even land to crush the revolution. To survive, Lenin unleashes a secret police and the Red Terror. Enemies, real and imagined, are arrested and shot. The dream now runs on force. Even loyal sailors who dare to demand freedom are gunned down at Kronstadt. War and chaos bring famine. Millions more starve. In 1922, the Soviet Union is born, the world's first communist state. In 1924, Lenin dies. After a ruthless power struggle, one man climbs to the top: Joseph Stalin. His great rival, Leon Trotsky, is exiled and later murdered in Mexico. Stalin will define what communism becomes in practice. He launches a crash plan to turn a farming nation into an industrial giant. Propaganda promises a glorious future to every worker and every child. Whole cities and steelworks rise in only a few years. But to feed the cities, Stalin seizes the farms. Peasants are forced onto giant state-run collectives. Those who resist are branded enemies, deported, or killed. Then the system fails. In the early 30s, the harvests collapse. In Ukraine and beyond, Millions starve, in a famine many call man-made. Then Stalin turns on his own people. The Great Purge begins. Party members, generals, and ordinary citizens are seized on invented charges. In staged show trials, old heroes confess to crimes they never committed. A knock at the door in the night could mean prison or a bullet. Millions vanish into the Gulag, a vast network of labor camps. Neighbors inform on neighbors. Fear becomes the glue of the state. History is rewritten. Even photographs are erased. Above it all towers Stalin, worshipped almost like a god. On paper, the Soviet Union has no unemployment, free housing, and free schools. The dream of equality has produced a master more powerful than any czar. Then, 1941, Hitler invades. At a staggering cost, the Soviet people turn the tide and march to Berlin. 27 million Soviet citizens die, defeating Nazi Germany. Victorious, Stalin's armies stay. Communism spreads across Eastern Europe. An invisible line falls across the continent. Churchill calls it the Iron Curtain. Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and more fall under Soviet control. America answers with the Marshall Plan, rebuilding the capitalist West. When Stalin blockades Berlin, the West feeds the city by air for a year. In 1949, revolution triumphs in China under Mao Zedong. Later, millions die in Mao's Great Leap Forward, a failed rush to industrialize China. His Cultural Revolution then turns the young against their own teachers and parents. Overnight, a fifth of humanity lives under communism. The world splits in two. West against East. Capitalism against communism. Two superpowers, armed with nuclear weapons, stare each other down. In 1957, the Soviets launch Sputnik, the first satellite. Then Yuri Gagarin becomes the first human in space. For a moment, communism looks like the future. East and West pour fortunes into spies, bombs, and rockets. But the rivalry turns deadly across the globe. Korea, Cuba, Vietnam. Proxy wars erupt on every continent. In Vietnam, the clash of the two systems becomes a brutal decade-long war. In 1962, Cuba brings the world to the very edge of nuclear war. When Hungary and Czechoslovakia try to break free, Soviet tanks roll in. Nowhere is the divide sharper than in the split city of Berlin. In 1961, overnight, a wall rises through its heart. Families are split in two. Guards shoot those who try to cross. For the world, it becomes the perfect symbol. A prison wall. By the 1970s, communism rules a third of the planet. But behind the flags and the parades, the system is quietly rotting. In state-run economies, the shelves are often bare. People queue for hours, for bread, for shoes, for almost everything. With no profit and no choice, few have any reason to work hard. The promised workers' paradise feels grey, poor, and watched. East Germans watch Western television and see a freedom they are denied. In 1986, a reactor explodes at Chernobyl, and the state tries to hide it. A long, costly war in Afghanistan drains the Soviet Union's strength and morale. In Poland, workers form a movement called Solidarity and demand change. In Moscow, a new leader arrives, Mikhail Gorbachev. He tries to save the system with openness and reform, but once people are allowed to speak, they will not stop. 1989. Across Eastern Europe, the people rise. In China, students fill Tiananmen Square. But there, the tanks do not stop. In Europe, they march in their millions, and this time, the soldiers do not fire. On November 9th, the gates of the Berlin Wall swing open. Strangers dance on the wall and tear it apart with their bare hands. One by one, the communist governments of Europe fall. In Romania, the dictator Ceausescu is overthrown in a matter of days. And then the unthinkable. The Soviet Union itself begins to break apart. Republic after republic declares independence. A last, desperate coup by hardliners collapses within days. On Christmas Day 1991, the red flag is lowered for the last time. The Soviet Union, the first communist state, is gone. The dream had promised paradise. The cost was staggering. Historians estimate communist regimes caused the deaths of tens of millions. Through famine, terror, and the camps, all in the name of equality. So why did a dream of fairness turn so dark, again and again? To share everything, someone must control everything. And absolute control in any hands tends to corrupt. The system also fought human nature. Without reward, effort faded. It is easy to promise heaven. It is far harder to build it without crushing people. China survived only by keeping the party, but embracing the market it once despised. A handful of states, from Cuba to North Korea, still fly the red flag today. Yet the hunger that created it, the longing for fairness, never truly went away. In a world of deep inequality, its promise still calls to millions. The red century leaves behind statues, ruins, and 100 million questions. Communism is not just a chapter of history, it is a warning. A warning about what happens when anyone holds absolute power over everyone else. That is the story of communism, the century's greatest dream and its greatest tragedy. Thanks for watching.